Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the Payback review. Payback tonight was from the PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and the show just ended, and the card for Payback, it looked pretty decent in my opinion, but the show tonight, I thought it was a decent show. Was it great? No. Was it perfect? No. But it was a decent show. It wasn't that bad. But the Payback card here, we had a steel cage match, Becky Lynch versus Trish Stratus. We had L.A. Knight, versus The Miz. And we also had a special guest referee for the match, which I'll get to. We had the United States Championship on the line where Rey Mysterio defended the title against Austin Theory. We had the Pittsburgh Steel City Street Fight with the Undisputed WWE Tag Team Championship on the line. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn defended the titles against Balor and Damian Priest. We had the Women's Championship on the line where Rhea Ripley defended the title against Raquel Rodriguez. And the main event, we had the World Heavyweight Championship on the line. Seth Rollins defend the title against Shinsuke Nakamura. But overall, Payback was a decent show. Wasn't that bad of a show. But anyways, let's jump right into the review. Payback opened up tonight with Becky Lynch versus Trish Stratus. Steel cage match. This is Trish Stratus' first ever steel cage match. And this rivalry between Becky Lynch and Trish Stratus has been absolutely fucking awful. It's one of the worst feuds of the year. Everything that Becky Lynch and Trish Stratus have done has been absolutely atrocious. And thank God this is the final match in their feud. Thank God. But surprisingly, this was a very good match. Both Becky Lynch and Trish Stratus did really well here. And the match got underway with both Becky Lynch and Trish Stratus approaching one another. Stratus ended up making the break to go for the door. Becky Lynch ended up pulling Trish Stratus back. She ended up going for the manhandle slam, but Trish Stratus elbowed Becky away, and we had Trish end up going to climb the wall of the cage. Becky Lynch ended up pulling Trish down, so Trish ended up slapping Becky. Becky was irate at this point, and she ended up bouncing Trish Stratus' head off all four corners of the ring. So Trish Stratus ended up going for a kick to Becky, but Becky ended up blocking the kick, and she hit a Bexploder to Trish. Becky Lynch then ended up grabbing Trish, ended up hitting a second Bexploder. And then Becky put Trish up, and she ended up hitting a third Bexploder to Trish. So we had Becky Lynch end up going for a manhandle slam to Trish, but Trish countered that and pulled Becky down by her hair. Trish Stratus then started to climb the cage, but Becky ended up meeting Trish on the top rope. Becky Lynch ended up knocking Trish down to the canvas, but Trish ended up pulling Becky down and onto the turnbuckle. Trish then ended up sending Becky headfirst into the wall of the cage. Trish Stratus then ended up sending Becky headfirst into the cage again. She ended up stretching Becky on the ropes, pulling back on her hair. So Trish ended up mashing Becky's face into the fencing of the cage, and she ended up telling the camera to get a close-up of Becky. So Becky ended up fighting back. She ended up hitting the ropes, and Trish ended up countering with a spine buster, to which Trish ended up going for the cover, and Becky ended up kicking out. Trish then ended up running for the door, but Becky ended up pulling Trish back and rolled Trish up, and Trish ended up kicking out at 2. Trish then quickly threw Becky down, and she ended up going for the cover, and Becky ended up kicking out. Trish ended up grabbing Becky and sent her into the cage head first. Trish then ended up stretching Becky against the ropes, and she fish hooked Becky's mouth. So Trish then ended up rubbing Becky Lynch's forehead on the fence of the cage. Trish then ended up throwing Becky's face onto the canvas twice, and she was walking around the ring laughing. Becky pulled herself up, and Trish Stratus ended up grabbing Becky, but Becky ended up sending Trish into the cage wall. Becky then ended up throwing Trish into the wall a second time, and she ended up lifting Trish up and ramrodding Trish into the wall 3 times. And so Becky ended up going for the cover. Trish ended up kicking out. Becky ended up going for this armor, but Trish ended up fighting out of that. Trish sent Becky into the cage, and Trish ended up doing her Matrix bend, where she bends herself back. And Becky ended up pausing. She ended up dropping a leg on Trish. So both Trish and Becky were down. Both women ended up slowly getting to their feet. They were exchanging punches. Becky ended up kicking Trish in her midsection and sent Trish headfirst into the cage wall. Becky then ended up going between the ropes, and they were both closed in against the cage wall. So Trish and Becky ended up going back and forth. They were bouncing each other off of the cage wall. So Becky ended up bouncing Trish Stratus off the wall at least, a lot of times. And you had, black and blue on top of Trish's forehead. So Becky ended up kicking Trish, and she ended up laying her out over the top rope. Becky ended up coming off the top rope with a diving leg drop to Trish. So Becky ended up going for the cover, and Trish ended up kicking out. So Becky ended up attacking Trish with some kicks, and Becky started to climb the cage. Trish Stratus ended up pulling Becky's feet out from under her. Trish ended up going for the stratosphere, but Becky ended up pulling the ropes. Trish then ended up sitting up, and both women were exchanging blows. Trish climbed over Becky Lynch and to the top of the cage. Trish ended up knocking Becky down to the canvas. Becky Lynch popped up and pulled Trish down. Trish started fighting Becky. Becky ended up pulling Trish down, ended up hitting a power bomb, and Becky ended up going for the cover, to which Trish ended up kicking out. But that power bomb was pretty good by Becky. So the crowd was chanting, "This is awesome," as Becky ended up going for a manhandle slam, but Trish ended up elbowing out and sent Becky into the cage. We had Trish end up kicking Becky in her midsection, and Trish ended up hitting Widow's Peak. Of course, the movie was made famous by Victoria, WWE legend Victoria. So that was really cool that Trish did the Widow's Peak on Becky. So Trish ended up going for the cover, and Becky ended up kicking out. So Trish ended up bouncing Becky's face off the mat. She ended up setting up for the Stratusfaction, but Becky ended up fighting out of that. She ended up hitting the Twist of Fate to Trish, just like, Lita. So we had Becky end up going for the cover, and Trish ended up kicking out. So Becky entered her Lita and Matt Hardy there. Because, of course, both of them, hit the Twist of Fate. So Becky ended up setting Trish Stratus up. She ended up going to the top rope. Becky ended up jumping, but Trish Stratus ended up moving out of the way. So Becky Lynch ended up, might have tweaked her knee at that point where she ended up jumping. Trish then ended up hitting Stratusfaction to Becky, to which Trish ended up going for the cover, and Becky ended up kicking out. Trish Stratus couldn't believe that Becky kicked out of the Stratusfaction. Like, years back when Trish was laying out her opponents with the Stratusfaction, nobody kicked out of that. Nobody kicked out of the Stratusfaction. So Trish was furious at that, and she started kicking away at Becky. Trish started to climb the cage. Becky ended up popping up and grabbed Trish's ankle. We had Trish end up nearly going to the top. Becky ended up pulling her down to the top rope. Becky ended up standing on the top rope. She ended up setting up for a manhandle slam, but Stratus ended up elbowing out of that. So Trish then ended up hitting another Stratus faction off the top rope to Becky, to which Trish ended up going for the cover, and Becky ended up kicking out. So Trish began to climb the wall, and Becky ended up quickly scaling the cage, and both women were sitting on the top rope. So they were exchanging blows atop the cage, and then Trish ended up knocking Becky over to the canvas. Trish was entirely over the cage, but Becky barely made it up the cage, and she ended up pulling Trish back. Trish's legs were trapped in the trails of the cage, so she couldn't make her way back up the top of the cage. So Becky ended up knocking Trish back. Trish was hanging upside down above the ringside area. Becky ended up managing to pull Trish back and turned her around on top of the cage. So Becky ended up hitting Stratus with a superplex back into the ring, which was awesome. Great spot there where Becky hit a superplex to Trish back into the ring off the top of the cage. So we had Becky end up going for the cover, and Trish ended up kicking out. So Becky ended up pulling herself up. She started to climb the cage. Becky ended up putting a leg over the top. Trish Stratus began crawling to the door. So Becky ended up climbing down. She ended up grabbing Trish's ankles. And out of nowhere, Zoey Stark ended up appearing. So Zoey Stark ended up grabbing Trish to try to pull her out of the cage. Becky Lynch started ripping Trish Stratus away from Zoey Stark. So it was pretty much a tug of war here between Becky Lynch and Zoey Stark. So we had Becky Lynch end up ripping Stratus away from Zoey Stark. Stark ended up slamming the door into Becky's face. Trish ended up rolling Becky up, and Becky ended up kicking out. Becky ended up ducking a chick kick from Trish, and she ended up hitting a manhandle slam. So Becky ended up going for the cover. Zoey Stark broke up the pin. So Becky ended up closing the door, and she ended up trapping Zoey Stark in the cage. Zoey Stark ended up knocking Becky Lynch down. She ended up telling Trish Stratus to climb the cage. So Becky ended up hitting Zoey with a manhandle slam. She ended up climbing the cage to grab Trish Stratus down. Becky ended up hitting a manhandle slam on Trish off the top rope, and she ended up going for the cover, and there you go. Becky Lynch ended up winning the match. So post-match, we had Zoey Stark ended up helping Trish Stratus up, but Trish Stratus pulled away from Zoey Stark. So Zoey Stark ended up grabbing Trish Stratus, but Trish ended up swinging, and she ended up missing on a slap. Trish Stratus ended up going to kick Zoey Stark out of the ring, but Zoey Stark ended up shutting the door. Zoey Stark ended up threatening Trish Stratus, and Stark ended up hitting the Z360 on Trish. Zoey Stark ended up ripping off her Thank You Trish shirt and threw it on Trish Stratus, and then Zoey Stark ended up walking off, and that was basically that. But overall, very good match this was between Becky Lynch and Trish Stratus inside a steel cage, and thank God this feud is over. Thank God. It's one of the worst feuds of the year. And Zoey Stark, being down on Trish Stratus, Zoey Stark babyface turn here. And then we had John Cena. John Cena made his way out. He's, of course, the host of Payback. He ended up getting a massive reaction there in Pittsburgh. So Cena got on the mic. He ended up welcoming Pittsburgh to Payback. He ended up putting over Becky Lynch versus Trish Stratus' steel cage match. He ended up saying that in 20 years, he's done a lot of things. He's been the first match, the last match, the champ, the challenger, a guest, a fan, a doctor, and a prototype. But he's never been a host. Cena ended up saying that he wasn't going to pass up being here tonight. He ended up saying that his job as a host is to make tonight special. He ended up saying there's no better way to make the night special then to be the special guest referee for a match he's had his eye on for a while. And that match was LA Knight versus The Miz. So John Cena was the special guest referee for LA Knight versus The Miz. So Miz made his way out. Miz was not too happy. And Miz got on the mic. He ended up saying that he would expect this from LA Knight, but not John Cena. He ended up saying that Cena is pandering to the audience. Miz ended up saying that they may say Cena is the greatest of all time, but he thinks Cena sucks as a host. Cena ended up saying to The Miz that this is his first time as a host, while Miz has a lot of experience. So he ended up saying to The Miz, does he have any advice for him? Miz ended up telling Cena not to make himself a special guest referee in his match, to which Cena ended up saying that was his one idea. Anything else? So Miz ended up saying that if he's asked to be a merman in Barbie, he should say no. So Cena ended up saying that he doesn't like Miz, but he respects him. Miz then wanted to say that he's the greatest WrestleMania host of all time, and that he got involved and had 2 matches. He ended up saying that he also wore a $10,000 suit to WrestleMania. He then wanted to say that Cena is nearly 50 and dresses like a Teletubby, which that made me laugh. So Cena ended up saying that he needs to take control, like being the special guest referee for Miz's match against LA Knight, to which the crowd ended up loving that. So of course, Miz ended up raising his hand. Of course he did. When my hand goes up, your mouth goes shut. So Miz ended up saying that Cena doesn't even have a referee shirt. But eventually someone immediately handed a referee shirt to Cena. Cena made himself the special guest referee, and Miz ended up saying no. And then Cena ended up saying yeah. And then Miz said no. And then Cena said yeah. So then LA Knight made his way out. Huge reaction to LA Knight there in Pittsburgh. And then the match got underway. The Miz versus LA Knight. John Cena, special guest referee of the match. And this was a decent match here. We had the crowd chanting for LA Knight. The Miz got on the apron, and the crowd was chanting tiny balls to the Miz. Miz took his time getting into the ring. Cena called for the bell to start the match, to which Miz immediately rolled out of the ring. LA Knight opened the ropes to let the Miz back into the ring. Miz then waved off the match. He ended up starting to head to the back, and that led to LA Knight chasing Miz, and he ended up punching Miz into the ring. Knight ended up taking Miz down, started punching away at him. Miz then quickly elbowed Knight back, and they began to exchange punches. Knight ended up coming out on top, sending Miz into the ropes for a back elbow. Knight ended up hitting a suplex, and he ended up putting Miz on the top rope. Miz then ended up finding a superplex from Knight, and he ended up giving Knight a front suplex off the middle rope. Miz then ended up coming off the top rope with a diving axe handle to Knight. He ended up putting Knight against the ropes and delivered a chop to Knight's chest. Knight then reversed the whip, ended up hitting a scoop power slam to the Miz. Knight ended up mounting Miz, started punching away at him. Miz got out of a suplex. He ended up trying to go for the skull crushing finale, but Knight ended up fighting out of that. Knight ended up going for the BFT, the blunt force trauma, but Miz ended up getting out of the ring. Knight quickly ended up taking Miz out with a baseball slide. Knight then bounced Miz off the ring steps, and then he ended up bouncing Miz off the commentary table. So when Knight was bouncing Miz off the commentary table many times, the crowd was going, yeah, yeah, yeah. So Knight got in the ring to break the referee's count, to break John Cena's count. And Knight ended up going back outside. Miz then pulled Knight face first into the commentary table. So we had Miz ended up mocking LA Knight's yeah, and he bounced Knight off the barricade a few times. Miz got in the ring and started taunting John Cena. Miz ended up going to the outside. He ended up charging at Knight, but Knight ended up hitting a back body drop into the timekeeper's area on Miz. Knight ended up sending Miz over the barricade, and Knight leapt off the barricade with a diving clothesline to Miz. Knight got Miz back into the ring. Miz went and attacked Knight, kicking him down the corner. Miz started choking Knight with his boot until Cena ripped Miz away. So Cena really didn't want to disqualify the Miz. So Knight popped out of the corner and clotheslined Miz down. Knight ended up stomping away at Miz and started choking Miz with his boot. Cena then pulled Knight away, but Knight ended up sidestepping Cena. Knight then started choking Miz again, so Cena ended up ripping him away. So at this point, LA Knight and John Cena ended up going face to face, to which Knight ended up saying that he'll put Cena down any day. So Miz ended up attacking Knight from behind and started stomping him. So when Knight ended up saying that he'll put Cena down any day, maybe we'll get a LA Knight versus John Cena match at some point, because John Cena is going to be here for 2 months. So who knows if we'll get an LA Knight and John Cena match, which I hope we do. So Miz started choking Knight on the middle rope. So later on in the match, Knight ended up sliding out of a skull-crushing finale from the Miz, and he rolled Miz up, and Miz ended up kicking out. Knight avoided Miz's patented corner clothesline, and he ended up hitting Miz with a twisting DDT, to which Knight ended up going for the cover, and Miz ended up kicking out. Miz then kicked Knight away and ended up hitting a jawbreaker to Knight. So Knight then ended up lifting Miz up, but Miz ended up rolling Knight up, and he ended up grabbing the rope. Cena noticed that, and he ended up kicking Miz's hand away, which that led to Miz getting in Cena's face. Cena ended up telling Miz never to take the low road. So Knight ended up going for the blunt force trauma, but Miz got out of it. Miz ended up ducking, and Knight nearly hit Cena. Miz then ended up hitting Knight with the skull-crushing finale, and he ended up going for the cover, and Knight ended up kicking out, which Miz couldn't believe that. So Miz decided to mock Cena. He was setting up for a 5-knuckle shuffle to Knight, but Knight kept up. He ended up hitting power slam to the Miz. Knight then ended up hitting an elbow drop to the Miz, and then he followed it up with the blunt force trauma. So Knight ended up going for the cover, and there you go. LA Knight ended up winning the match. Post-match, Knight celebrated, and he ended up meeting Cena on the ramp. So Cena and Knight ended up going face to face. Cena extended his hand, and he ended up saying, "It is a show of respect." So Knight ended up shaking hands with Cena. Cena walked off, and Knight continued to celebrate his win over The Miz, and that was that. But overall, decent match it was. It wasn't a great match by any means, but it was decent. And then we had Austin Theory versus Rey Mysterio for the United States Championship. And this match was sponsored by Cinnamon Toast Crunch. We had the Cinnamon Toast Crunch logo on the Titantron and on the LED barricade and on the LED ring. So the match was a good match here. So match started off with Theory quickly powering Mysterio to the corner, ended up shouldering him. We had Theory end up sending Rey into the ropes, but Rey ended up dropping and ended up kicking Theory in the head. Theory then ended up sending Rey into the corner, but Rey ended up turning Theory around, and he started the 10 punches to Theory. Rey ended up going to slingshot over Theory, but Theory ended up catching him. Theory pulled Rey into the ropes and ended up hitting a clothesline. Theory ended up taking Rey down near the corner, ended up hitting a slingshot stomp. Theory followed up with a fisherman suplex to Rey, to which Theory ended up going for the cover, and Rey ended up kicking out. Theory then ended up hitting another fisherman suplex to Rey. He then mocked the late, great Eddie Guerrero. So Theory ended up taking it to Rey. He ended up putting Rey in a headlock, and then he whipped him around, ended up slamming Rey down, and Theory ended up going for the cover, to which Rey ended up kicking out. Theory then applied a rear chinlock on Rey, to which Rey ended up fighting out of that, and he elbowed Theory. Theory then ended up shoving Rey into the middle rope and started choking him on the rope. Theory then punched Rey back and ended up whipping Rey, starting first into the turnbuckles. He ended up whipping Rey hard into the turnbuckles. Theory then put Rey on the top rope and started punching him. Theory tried to rip the mask off of Rey, but Rey ended up fighting Theory off with some elbows. Rey then ended up taking Theory out with a moonsault block. Rey then ended up taking it to Theory, ended up hitting a head scissors takeover, and then he ended up sliding under the bottom ring, ended up hitting a tornado DDT on the floor to Theory. Rey then put Theory in the ring, ended up hitting a seated senton off the top rope, and Rey ended up going for the cover, and Theory ended up kicking out. We had Rey end up going for the 619, but Theory ended up avoiding that. Rey tried to springboard off the middle turnbuckle, but Theory ended up catching Rey in a torture rack, ended up spinning Rey into a bomb, and Theory ended up going for the cover, and Rey kicked out. Rey then ended up avoiding the A-Town down from Theory, and Rey ended up hitting a step-up enziguri. Theory ended up knocking Rey back, ended up hitting a Rolling Thunder drop kick. Rey then popped up, ended up hitting a drop kick to Theory, and both Rey and Theory slowly got up. They were exchanging blows. Rey then soon hit a head scissor into position, and he hit the 619 to Theory. Rey ended up going for a slingshot splash. Theory got his knees up. Theory ended up setting up for the A-Town down, but Rey countered that into a roll. And so there you go. Rey Mysterio ended up winning the match, retaining the United States Championship. Post-match, Rey ended up celebrating with the LWO on the stage, and that was basically that. But overall, this was a good match. Rey Mysterio and Austin Theory worked really well here. The wrestling was good from both of these guys. But good match it was. And then we had Kathy Kelly. Kathy Kelly was backstage with Becky Lynch. Kathy Kelly ended up asking her, what's next for the man? So then we had Tiffany Stratton, who was the NXT Women's Champion. She interrupted Becky, ended up saying that they got off on the wrong foot. And Tiffany ended up saying that when she said she'd be a better NXT Women's Champion than anyone in history, she said Becky was a former NXT Women's Champion when she wasn't. Tiffany Stratton ended up saying that she is here to offer a disingenuous apology. So Becky ended up telling Tiffany to worry about her title defense on Tuesday. So that was basically that. But love Tiffany Stratton. You know, she is a good NXT Women's Champion. She is going to be a star when she comes up to the main roster. But Tiffany Stratton is just absolutely great in the ring. And Becky here, you know, she was all bruised up from the cage match. You know, her face was all bruised and beat red. And then we had Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn versus Finn Balor and Damian Priest. This was the Pittsburgh Steel City Street Fight for the Undisputed WWE Tag Team Championship. This, in my opinion, was the best match of the night, in my opinion. Just really enjoyed this match. The crowd was into it. So the match got underway. A brawl broke out between these guys. Kevin Owens and Damian Priest end up fighting to ringside, and then they fight up the ramp. Sami Zayn then focused on Finn Balor at ringside. Owens ended up knocking Priest back and bounced him off the metal barricade. Sami Zayn ended up bouncing Balor and put him in the ring. He then ended up throwing 3 steel chairs into the ring. Balor then ended up exiting the ring, and he ended up cracking Sami Zayn in the head with a kendo stick. So Balor ended up getting a few kendo sticks out from under the ring. Balor pulled out a bucket with a towel in it. Balor then swung the towel around and stomped on it. So Owens ended up clotheslining Balor at ringside. Owens ended up taking it to Balor until Priest ended up joining in. Balor and Priest then double teamed on Kevin Owens. Sami Zayn ended up taking both Balor and Priest out with a somersault senton. So we had Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Both ended up grabbing garbage cans. So they ended up hitting Priest with the garbage can. Kevin Owens got into the ring with Balor and ripped his shirt off to reveal a picture of the late, great Terry Funk. And very cool Terry Funk shirt there that Kevin Owens was wearing. Really like that, that Kevin Owens dedicated, the match there, just wearing a Terry Funk shirt in honor of him. So Owens and Sami Zayn put a garbage can over Balor's head. They both end up hitting the kendo sticks to Balor with the garbage can over Balor's head. So Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn get on the apron, and they got the crowd fired up. They then end up pulling a table out from under the ring, which got a big ovation because the crowd loves seeing tables. So they end up setting the table up at ringside. They end up going after Priest, but Priest fought off Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Priest ended up wrecking the garbage can on Sami Zayn's back, and he threw the garbage can at Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens fought back, but Priest ended up cutting Owens off. Balor ended up coming around the corner, ended up hitting Sami Zayn in his midsection with a steel chair. Balor and Priest ended up getting Owens in the ring, and they ended up hitting him in his midsection a few times with some chairs. Priest then held Kevin Owens up, and Balor ended up hitting Owens in the head with a garbage can. Sami Zayn ended up running to help, but Balor and Priest ended up taking Sami Zayn down. Balor ended up standing on the second rope and started taunting the crowd. He then started stomping Sami Zayn out of the ring. Balor then elbowed Sami Zayn in the head. Priest then ended up throwing a lot of chairs into the ring, and he ended up making an island of chairs in the ring. Balor then ended up attacking Sami Zayn against the commentary table, and in the ring we saw Kevin Owens and Damian Priest in there, where Kevin Owens ended up attacking Priest, started beating him down. Balor then ended up running in, ended up hitting Owens with the chair. Sami Zayn then ended up hitting Balor with the chair and smashed it on his back to knock him out of the ring. Priest and Balor ended up climbing over the barricade, and they walked into the crowd. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn ended up going after Priest and Balor and bounced them off some production crates. So then suddenly we saw Dominic Mysterio blindsided Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, which we know that at some point Dominic and also Rhea Ripley were going to get involved in this match, which Rhea Ripley I'll get to later on, what she did in the match here. So we had the Judgment Day end up staying tall. They ended up taunting the crowd. So Balor and Priest started discussing strategy, and then they turned around and they saw Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn wearing Pittsburgh Penguins jerseys. And to which Michael Cole ended up calling the Penguins the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah, Michael Cole, it's hockey. It's not football. So Owens was bleeding profusely from his forehead. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn ended up taking out Balor and Priest with hockey sticks, and they ended up beating Dominic to the back. So we had Sami Zayn end up going to slam Balor on the chair island in the ring, but Priest ended up running in. Kevin Owens then reemerges and pulled Priest down, and Owens ended up sending Priest into the steel steps. Sami Zayn then ended up hitting Balor with the Blue Thunder Bomb onto the chairs, to which Sami Zayn ended up going for the cover, and Balor kicked out. So we had Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn end up setting up 4 chairs, seat to seat. Priest then ended up attacking Owens and Zayn. He had given Sami Zayn a broken arrow onto the chairs. So we had Balor and Priest ended up setting Kevin Owens over the commentary table. They ended up smashing his face with a garbage can. And they then clotheslined Kevin Owens into the crowd. Both Priest and Balor ended up beating Owens through the crowd. Owens started to fight back. And Sami Zayn ended up appearing. He ended up helping out Owens. And they all were fighting over to the set of the kickoff show. Balor then ended up kneeing Owens in his midsection, but Sami Zayn ended up bouncing him off the desk. Sami Zayn ended up standing on the desk, ended up hitting a somersault senton onto both Priest and Balor, which was great. So then Dominic ended up returning and attacked once again Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Owens ended up attacking Dominic and sent him headfirst into a crate. So Kevin Owens ended up clearing off a production table, ended up sending Dominic into a metal divider. Kevin Owens ended up laying Dominic on the production table and climbed up to the top of a stairwell. And Owens ended up hitting Dominic with a swanton bomb through the table on the concrete, which was covered by a thin carpet, which that was awesome. Awesome spot there. So back in the ring, we saw Balor and Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn ended up hitting the exploder into the turnbuckles. He was sent up for a haluva kick to Balor, but Priest ended up throwing a garbage can into Sami Zayn's face. Balor ended up going for the cover, to which Sami ended up kicking out. We had later on, Sami Zayn ended up knocking Balor off the apron through the table at ringside, and Sami Zayn got fired up, and Priest ended up grabbing Sami Zayn by his throat. So Kevin Owens ended up getting in the ring. Owens ended up hitting Priest with a stunner. Sami Zayn then followed up with a haluva kick, and he ended up going for the cover. And JD McDonough pulled Sami Zayn out of the ring. So Kevin Owens was furious at that. He ended up turning McDonough inside out with a clothesline, and he ended up hitting McDonough with a spine buster onto the commentary table, which the table didn't even break. So then all of a sudden, this is where Rhea Ripley comes into play here. Rhea Ripley comes out of nowhere, spears Kevin Owens through the timekeeper's area barricade, which that was crazy. So Sami Zayn and Balor slowly end up crawling back into the ring. Balor ended up hitting Sami Zayn with a sling blade, followed up with a woo drop kick into the corner. Balor headed to the top rope for the coup de grace, but Sami Zayn moved out of the way. So we had Sami Zayn end up hitting Balor with the haluva kick. He ended up going for the cover, but Dominic ended up hitting Sami Zayn in the head with the Money in the Bank briefcase. So Sami Zayn ended up falling over. Balor ended up putting an arm on Sami to pick up the win. And so there you go. We have Finn Balor and Damian Priest win the match, and they are the new undisputed WWE Tag Team Champions. So now all of Judgment Day have gold. So post-match, we had the Judgment Day, celebrating. They all have gold, and they stood tall on the ramp. Pyro started going off. Damian Priest was heard shouting, "The Judgment Day runs WWE," to which Dominic Mysterio ended up saying, "And don't you forget it." So pretty much that was basically that. Overall, this was the best match of the night. Really enjoyed this Pittsburgh Steel City street fight. The crowd was into it. It was good. It was a good match. And, it was an awesome tribute to Terry Funk, with Kevin Owens bleeding, having that crimson mask, bleeding on him. So, but good match. And then we had the Grayson Waller effect. Grayson Waller welcomed the crowd to what could be possibly the greatest Grayson Waller effect ever of all time. He kept saying that it's fitting that this is happening in this city. And he kept saying that his guest and the city of Pittsburgh have something in common. They both have low reading scores. So then Grayson Waller introduced Cody Rhodes. So Cody Rhodes ended up coming out, got a huge reaction in Pittsburgh. Everyone goes, whoa, as always. Cody ended up saying, so Pittsburgh. He was going to say, what do you want to talk about? But Waller ended up cutting Cody off, ended up saying that no one cares about what Pittsburgh wants to talk about. He ended up saying all that matters is what he wants to talk about, what Grayson Waller wants to talk about. Waller ended up saying that he wants to ask Cody about his big announcement. He ended up saying that Cody's year has had so many ups and so many downs. Waller ended up saying that he appreciates Cody begging to be on a show for the Grayson Waller rub. He ended up saying that big things are in store for Cody. And Grayson Waller ended up calling Cody Kid. So Cody ended up saying that Waller is a recent graduate from hip toss class. He ended up saying that Waller has probably studied some of the great WWE talk shows. And Cody ended up saying that they could brawl, knock over the furniture, and hit him with a crossroads. He ended up saying, is that what the people want? To which the crowd ended up going crazy. Cody then ended up saying, no more subversion. Cody ended up saying that he wanted to be on this show and will give him a big scoop. So Cody then ended up asking Waller if he watches Raw, to which Waller ended up saying that he does. He ended up asking Waller if he watches NXT, to which Waller ended up saying that he also does. And he ended up saying to Waller, does he watch SmackDown? And Waller ended up saying, well, he's the biggest star on the show, so he watches his stuff. Cody then ended up saying that SmackDown is intriguing. He ended up saying there was a wrong that needed to be righted. Cody ended up saying that he cashed in every political chip he had to make this happen. He ended up saying that the newest member of the Monday Night Raw roster is main event JEY USO. Yeah, JEY USO made his return, big ovation. He is now part of the Raw roster. So JEY USO came out. He had a new theme song, which his new theme song is absolutely awful. It really is. Jimmy Uso's music is much better than Jay's. JEY USO's theme music is, oh, down since day one, it's just me, down since. Awful. It's absolutely awful, his new theme music. So JEY USO got into the ring. He ended up posing for the crowd. Waller sarcastically welcomed Jay back. Ended up saying that he's been gone for 2 weeks. So Cody had left the ring, and he was standing at the top of the ramp. Waller ended up asking how Jay feels about being on Raw. Waller ended up saying that he's been a twin his whole life and has been surrounded by the bloodline. So Waller ended up saying, as an individual, Jay has achieved absolutely nothing. So Cody ended up saying nice things about Jay won't make him a big deal. He ended up saying that if anyone needs the Grayson Waller rub, and then JEY USO ended up super kicking Grayson Waller down and knocked over one of the plants. Cody then watched from the stage, and he looked satisfied. Jay stood on the middle rope, and the entire arena was following his arm waving, which, was great. But did this segment really need to be needed on the pay-per-view tonight or the premium live event? They could have just waited until Raw on Monday. This did not need to be on the PLE tonight. And, JEY USO, being a part of the Raw roster, at point I'm like, this makes no sense whatsoever. But as I thought about it, I'm like, okay, this keeps Jay from the bloodline and gives him something to do different before going into the bloodline story again. Because maybe WWE will be setting up Jay versus Jimmy at WrestleMania. So this gives Jey a whole lot of time to go on a singles run and come back into the Bloodline story with Jimmy and Roman. We're possibly having Jimmy versus Jey at WrestleMania next year. But that's how the way I see it. And then we had Raquel Rodriguez versus Rhea Ripley. This is for the Women's World Championship. And this match was a mess, in my opinion. It really was. It was not great of a match. Both women ended up locking up. Both Rhea and Raquel started tussling around the ring. Rhea Ripley ended up turning Raquel in the corner. So, Rhea Ripley, I like the outfit that Rhea Ripley was wearing here for the match, where she was paying tribute to China, which that was nice. So, Rhea Ripley ended up shoving Raquel. Raquel ended up shoving Rhea back. Rhea Ripley ended up hooking a side headlock on Raquel. Raquel ended up trying to whip her off, but Rhea Ripley ended up holding on. Raquel ended up lifting Rhea Ripley up, but Rhea ended up fighting it. Raquel ended up absorbing a shoulder tackle to Rhea, and Rhea Ripley started talking a little trash. Raquel ended up hitting the ropes, ended up hitting a shoulder tackle, but Rhea Ripley ended up shaking that off. So both women got each other's faces. Rhea Ripley ended up pulling on Raquel's hair, so Raquel ended up lifting her. Rhea Ripley ended up sliding off, but Raquel ended up shoulder tackling Rhea. Rhea immediately rolled out of the ring to recover and stop the momentum. So Raquel ended up reaching over. She grabbed Rhea Ripley by her hair, to which Rhea Ripley ended up knocking Raquel back and charged the ring, but Raquel ended up shoulder tackling Rhea Ripley again. So Raquel ended up attacking Rhea in the corner. Rhea ended up fighting back. She ended up trying to go for a whip, but Raquel ended up stopping, to which Rhea Ripley ended up clubbing Raquel with some clotheslines, but Raquel didn't go down. We had Raquel ended up taking Rhea down. She ended up hitting the scoop slam. Rhea ended up soon getting to her feet. She ended up grabbing a handful of hair from Raquel while tripping Raquel over. So Rhea Ripley ended up hitting a vicious dropkick to Raquel's face, and we saw Rhea Ripley. She was bleeding from the nose. It looked like Raquel might have hit Rhea hard, that Rhea's nose ring ripped out, and so that was why I think Rhea was bleeding from the nose, because did not even see the nose ring, the big nose ring that she wears. So Raquel had to knock her nose ring out hard, for Rhea to bleed from her nose. So Rhea Ripley ended up choking Raquel on the turnbuckles, started talking trash about Liv Morgan. Rhea Ripley ended up kicking Raquel, ended up clubbing her back. Rhea Ripley ended up jumping on Raquel's back, ended up slapping the back of her head. Raquel ended up trying to fight back, but Rhea ended up grounding her, and she ended up going for the cover, to which Raquel ended up kicking out. Rhea Ripley ended up hitting the snapmare, ended up kicking Raquel in her spine. Rhea Ripley ended up applying a grounded abdominal stretch to Raquel. So Rhea Ripley ended up stretching Raquel until Raquel ended up fighting up. Rhea Ripley ended up quickly kneeing her in the face a few times, and she ended up applying a front face lock. Raquel ended up powering out and threw Rhea Ripley across the ring. And later on in the match, you had Dominic Mysterio end up coming to ringside. He got into the ring. Raquel ended up grabbing Dominic, ended up hitting him with a running power slam, which that led to Rhea Ripley quickly kicking Raquel in her knee, and then she ended up kicking Raquel in the head. Rhea Ripley then hit the riptide to Raquel, to which Rhea Ripley ended up going for the cover, and there you go. Rhea Ripley ended up winning the match, retaining the Women's World Championship. But overall, the match wasn't great. The match was a mess, in my opinion. And then we had John Cena. John Cena as the host. He is now being an interviewer. He was wearing a gray coat and a pink bow tie. So he ended up saying as the host, he's giving himself jobs he's never had. He ended up saying that he's Lance from Southpaw Championship Wrestling. So John Cena then introduced the new undisputed WWE Tag Team Champions, Finn Balor and Damian Priest. Balor ended up saying that the champs are here. Cena ended up saying that they weren't on the same page recently, but now they're champions. Priest ended up saying that families fight, but they're the Judgment Day, and they're ruling the world. So Cena ended up saying that this is tougher than it looks. And then he threw it back to commentary, and that was that. But Cena was funny in that gray coat and wearing that pink bow tie. It was funny. Main event: Seth Rollins versus Shinsuke Nakamura for the World Heavyweight Championship. So we had Seth Rollins making his way to the ring. Of course, the crowd sing along to his song, "Whoa." And that went on for like 4 or 5 minutes. And then he ended up taking a bow. And Nakamura had a sort of comic book themed video playing, which was cool. I liked the animation to it. It almost looked very anime-ish. And Nakamura was talking about how Rollins was once a great warrior and how he will be put down. He was speaking about that in Japanese. But the match itself, it was a good match. It was a good main event. The Great Muta, WWE Hall of Famer, was at ringside for the match. So we had the match started off with both Rollins and Nakamura circling the ring. They end up approaching each other, and they end up locking up. Rollins ended up going for a waist lock to Nakamura. Nakamura ended up turning it, but Rollins twisted out and applied a hammerlock to Nakamura. Nakamura ended up fighting it. He ended up twisting out of a cartwheel. Nakamura ended up hitting a headlock takeover to Rollins, but Rollins quickly popped up. So both men end up circling around the ring again. They end up going for a test of strength. Rollins ended up going for a drop toe hold, but Nakamura ended up falling back. Rollins ended up applying a side headlock, to which Nakamura ended up fighting up and backed Rollins into the ropes. Nakamura ended up rubbing Rollins' injured back, and he smacked it. Nakamura backed up, ended up saying to Rollins, "Come on!" So Rollins then charged at Nakamura, and Nakamura ended up going for a German suplex. Rollins ended up getting away, but Nakamura ended up kicking Rollins in his back, to which, of course, Rollins has back problems. He's had those back problems for 4 years. So Nakamura ended up sending Rollins to the ropes, but Rollins ended up forearming Nakamura. Rollins then ended up punching and kicking him to the corner. Nakamura then reversed the whip to the corner, but Rollins slingshotted over Nakamura. Rollins ended up hitting the ropes, ended up taking Nakamura down. Rollins then rolled out of the ring to recover, so Rollins ended up delivering a suicide dive to Nakamura. Rollins ended up getting Nakamura in the ring. He ended up going for the pedigree, but Nakamura ended up hitting a back body drop to Rollins. Nakamura then ended up kicking Rollins in his back a few times. Of course, Nakamura was focusing on Rollins' back, in the match here. Nakamura then put his foot on Rollins, ended up hitting the good vibrations. Nakamura ended up laying Rollins on the top rope. He ended up going for a run knee strike, but Rollins ended up moving out of the way. He then grabbed Nakamura and jumped over the top rope to whiplash him on the ropes. Rollins then ended up hitting a springboard senton splash to Nakamura. Rollins ended up going for the springboard moonsault, but he landed on his feet because Nakamura moved out of the way. Nakamura got out of the ring, but Rollins ended up quickly taking him out with a suicide dive. Rollins then started talking trash to Nakamura at ringside, and Rollins ended up bouncing Nakamura off the commentary table. Rollins then climbed the barricade to deliver a stomp, but Nakamura got up and flipped Rollins onto the commentary table, to which the table didn't break. So Nakamura then turned Rollins inside out with a whip into the barricade, so Rollins went back first into the barricade. Nakamura ended up getting Rollins in the ring. He ended up going for the cover, to which Rollins kicked out. Nakamura then stretched Rollins on the ropes before laying him on the top rope. Nakamura then ended up hitting a run knee strike to Rollins. Rollins turned over, and Nakamura ended up hitting a run knee strike to Rollins' spine. And Nakamura ended up going for the cover, to which Rollins ended up kicking out. Nakamura then kicked Rollins in his midsection and jumped on Rollins' back. Nakamura then applied a modified camel clutch on Rollins. Rollins fought out, so Nakamura ended up kicking Rollins in the spine. Nakamura then pulled Rollins down to hit a backbreaker, to which Nakamura ended up going for the cover, to which Rollins kicked out. Nakamura ended up pulling Rollins over the apron, ended up hitting a run knee strike to Rollins' head. Nakamura then jumped off the apron with a knee to Rollins' spine. Nakamura then pulled Rollins in the ring, and he ended up going for the cover, to which Rollins kicked out. Nakamura continued to attack Rollins and applied a single leg crab on Rollins. Rollins fought back, but Nakamura ended up cutting Rollins off. Nakamura ended up going to the top rope, and Rollins ended up chopping Nakamura's chest. Rollins then set up for a superplex, but then hesitated because, of course, his broken back. So Rollins called an audible and ended up hitting a Frankensteiner on Nakamura. So at the end of the match, we had Nakamura end up kicking Rollins in his face. Rollins ended up getting out of a roll-up, ended up hitting Nakamura with a stomp. So Rollins ended up going for the cover, and there you go. Seth Rollins ended up winning the match, retaining the World Heavyweight Championship. Overall, this was a good main event here. Rollins and Nakamura gave it all they got here. They worked really well, and the wrestling for both of them was good here. It was a very physical match with Nakamura and Rollins here. Of course, Rollins' back, he has a messed up back, that he's been dealing with for 4 years. Just Nakamura just, focusing on Rollins' back 95% during this match. Post-match, Rollins was clearly in a lot of pain, as what we saw, and Nakamura ended up angrily pacing at ringside, and that was how Payback ended. But overall, Payback was a decent show. Wasn't great or perfect by any means. It wasn't a bad show. But anyways, that's it for my review of Payback. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and until next video, I'll see you all later.